Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Mom on the Verge podcast, where I aim to help you improve your sense of joy, purpose, and meaning in this life. We will talk about a lot of different ways we can do this, but ultimately, we'll be working toward finding our way back home to ourselves and remembering that even in the most challenging times, peace is only a breath away. I am your host, Katie Farinas, a mom, nurse, and yogi on a mission to improve mental health and build community in our world. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how much it means to me that I have listeners who just keep coming back week after week to listen to the show. It really makes me feel like I'm on purpose by doing this show, and I'm just so grateful for that. And I really hope that it's impacting your life in a positive way. So today I will be speaking with Kris Ashley. Kris is a podcast host. She has her own podcast called Change Your Mind with Kris Ashley. She is also a speaker. She is a coach, and she is an author of the book Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. And today we will be speaking all about that book. I read the book before Kris and I had this conversation, and I highly recommend it. It was a great read, especially if you are dipping your toe in and trying to find your way in this world and go deeper into spiritual practices. It covers a lot of information. There's a ton of wisdom in there. So we touched on as much as we could get through in the hour that we had, but there is so much more in the book. So we talked about manifestation, what it is and how we can do it in our lives. We talked about getting outside of our comfort zone and the importance of doing that if we want change in our lives. We talked about our ego, what it is, why we have one, and what we can do to get out of our ego to live a bigger life. We talked about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness in manifesting the life that we want. We talked about purpose and how it's guided by our higher self and how we can find it. And we talked about the impact each of us has on one another, how we are all part of a whole, and we can impact each other even if we are not in physical proximity to one another. So it was a fascinating conversation, and I really enjoyed having it with Kris. And in fact, her and I have discussed maybe her coming back to delve deeper into some of the topics that we covered here. So look out for that in the future. That's a possibility. Kris and I actually have similar stories in the sense that we both came to spirituality through trauma. We both experienced trauma at a fairly young age, and we were left to try to make sense of it, make sense of why it happened and what it meant and why we're really here on this planet. And both of us ended up really stumbling into these ancient wisdom traditions and spiritual practices and healing modalities, and found healing for ourselves, and then decided we wanted to help others to heal as well. So we're kind of kindred spirits on that journey. It's probably one of the reasons why I really enjoyed having this conversation. I know you're going to love it too. As always, I ask that if you really are benefiting from this show, if it is helping you in any way, if you feel, heard, seen, more connected, more understood, if things are resonating with you, please like, download, or share the show. Sharing it with someone is really powerful, someone that you think maybe could benefit from the show as well. I would really appreciate that. And again, I thank you so much for coming back each week to hear each new episode. I'm going to keep making great ones for you. And I always want to hear feedback. So if there's any episodes you want me to make, topics you want me to cover, reach out to me. At the bottom of the show notes is also my link tree, which has all the links to me, all ways of finding me. So use that to get in contact with me. And I will talk to you at the end of the show. Bye. Hi, Kris. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here as well.
I am excited to be here too. I just finished reading your book. It's amazing. We will give the name of the book throughout the show and in the show notes, but I think all of my listeners should get it. It was so insightful and fantastic. So I would love to give our listeners, before we launch into your book and all that it's about, I'd love to give them a little background on you and what led you to this point in your life where you decided to write this book and learned all the information that's in it that can be so helpful to people.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for all the sweet words that you just said. That means a lot to pour your heart into something and have it resonate with someone. So it's still very surreal. It's amazing.
Yeah, you should see how many dog-eared pages I have and how much highlighting that was done. And I was like, okay, Katie, calm down. We cannot get all of this in an hour-long show. So you will have to get the book if you want to get the rest of the juicy details, but we will do our best to cover a good portion of the topics.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot packed in there for sure. So I'm Kris Ashley. I'm a coach, I'm an author, I'm a speaker. And what led me to this point, I had a spiritual awakening in 2002. And my story is probably very similar to a lot of people who have had a spiritual awakening or who have just gotten to that point where they're like, wow, something really needs to change in my life, right? I need to reinvent myself. Something has to happen. And it starts with your own trauma, oftentimes. So mine is no different. When I was 12 years old, I was sexually abused by a family member for 4 years. And I had this really big, tight-knit, extended Italian family. Like if you've ever seen my big fat Greek wedding, we were the Italian version of that. And when this extended family found out what happened to me, many of them disowned me. And it left me with all of these low vibration emotions, as I call them, with like anger and guilt that as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to cope with. Most adults don't know how to cope with those types of emotions. And so it sent me down this downward spiral. I was getting in trouble in school. I was self-harming. I was turning to drugs. My life was just a mess. I was in a really dark place. And my world completely changed when someone handed me a book. And this book changed my way of viewing the world. It opened up the possibility that there is more to life and the universe and this human existence than what we've been taught. And I remember reading it and thinking, wow, this feels true. Something feels like the truth for once. And I like to say I was like a sleeper agent, right? Like something inside of me just woke up. And so when I finished that book, I started reaching for more. And I just became insatiable. I was devouring every metaphysical, spiritual, new age, personal development book I could get my hands on. I started attending retreats. I found all of these teachers to study under. And I was doing all these healing modalities. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was doing the hard inner work. Like to me, I was like, oh, wow, I'm tapping into this hidden sacred knowledge that not many people know about. And I was just on this adventure. But I was actually healing myself. And my life totally changed for the better. And synchronicities were happening and I was able to manifest things. And I was like, wow, I feel like I have magical powers. This is amazing. And then the other side of my story is that as I was changing my mind and getting better, my mother started to get worse because her family had been ripped down the seams. And she didn't have these books and teachers and healing modalities that I did. And it started to manifest as physical illness for her. She got cancer, she got hepatitis, she got a bunch of other really serious illnesses. But she also got these really bizarre afflictions that her doctors at Northwestern couldn't even explain. And so they did what they do. They were giving her pills, and then they were giving her pills for the side effects of those pills. And she was on a fentanyl patch for years. And they were kind of just throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. And as a result, my mother slept for all but a few hours of daylight. She would fall down all the time. She would forget conversations we just had. She would fall asleep at the dinner table. And this lasted almost 15 years. And I had this compounded guilt, right? That I had destroyed my family and broken my mother. But if you read my book, you'll know that I believe everything happens for a reason. And I like to say it was my mother who was my biggest teacher. Because as I watched her take steps deeper into depression and illness, and I was seeing what was happening to her human body and spirit as she made those choices, I was going the other direction, right? I was seeing what was happening to my own body and spirit as I was changing my mind about life and the nature of reality and the universe. And so I made a promise to myself, and it is a promise I've kept to this day, that I would do everything I could to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, physically, and I would always prioritize my health. And after 2 decades, I've created the life of my dreams, and I decided it was time to give back. And I took a life coach training. I wrote a book. I launched my company, and the rest is history.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I just first want to say that I know that you believe everything happens for a reason, and how much growth that has come from that, but it doesn't mean that these things aren't hard. And I'm very sorry about what happened to you when you were a child. That is a lot to handle as a child. So I really am very sorry about that.
Honestly, if I had a choice, I wouldn't do it any other way. It made me who I was today. It was the catalyst that I needed to awaken.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of people need a catalyst like that, right? Not everyone just wakes up one day and they're like, wow, there's so much more to the world, So I appreciate the sentiment, but and I've forgiven all those people, and obviously it's not triggering to talk about. I think it's just what had to happen.
Yeah. And I really do identify with your story in a lot of ways. I did not have that particular experience, but I had other experiences in my life. I had a chronic pain condition and episodes of depression, and my daughter had very serious mental health issues. And I had grown up with family members with very serious mental health issues. That was then like the burden of that. Some of the burden of that was placed on me, and having to kind of step into roles that I shouldn't have had to step into as a young child. And I came to a spiritual path through pain, through physical pain. And I was doing the same thing. I was, reading books and listening to podcasts and becoming a meditator and doing yoga and just all of these things that were healing me. And that's the only reason I was doing them, was to heal me, because I was in a place where I needed to find meaning in life, where I wasn't finding meaning in life. And so I was searching for that meaning. And when I stumbled upon these practices and these teachers, it was like, yes, like everything that they were saying, I was like, that resonates so deeply in my soul and in my body. Yes, feels so true to me. That it just couldn't be any other way. The truth of it was palpable. And those things saved my life. And I believe they saved my daughter's life. And when the pandemic hit and people were becoming unglued about what was happening in our society, I looked around and I thought, oh my gosh, everyone needs this. Like, I've just been doing this for me. I've just been doing this because I've had struggles in my life that I needed to deal with. But I need to get this out. More people need to know about this. And that's how this podcast was started, because I really wanted to start spreading this information into the world as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing your story. And you couldn't have said it. I couldn't have said it better. Like that resonates down to the soul, right? And it's almost like this ancient knowledge is in our DNA, right? Just waiting to be awakened. And I think the world needs all the people possible to help spread this. So thank you for the work you do. I think it's really important.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's dive into the book a little bit. So the book is called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, and it has a lot to do about manifestation, which I think is a word that's becoming much more common in our vernacular right now. The law of attraction was I think, almost like a precursor to the word manifestation. I think we used to hear those words, law of attraction, more years ago, and now we're hearing more manifestation. Do you see a difference between those two, or do you think that they're the same?
I think law of attraction is the mechanism we use, but manifestation is the action that we take. So I think they go hand in hand. But you're right. It's amazing. It's almost like they become buzzwords now. But back in 2002, when I was starting to do this, no one was talking about it.
Yes.
Now it's on Joe Rogan.
Yes, it's
true. Amazing. And I think that speaks to the fact that we are in the middle of an awakening. right? It's like you can feel things rapidly speeding up, and more people are becoming conscious and aware. It's an exciting time to be alive.
It really is. It really is. And I agree with you. It's like all over this word is all over, which in some ways is fantastic because we are getting that word out and it is spreading. But also I want to make sure that we don't dilute the word and that its true meaning and its true like the way in which that it occurs is really understood. So how about you give our listeners a little idea of what you mean when you say manifestation and, how we can do this in our lives?
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And I talk about this a lot too, because, the law of attraction is so real. And the only thing I don't like about the law of attraction is the way a lot of people sell it nowadays. And I have heard so many quote unquote gurus talk about it like the universe is this genie in a bottle, right? Where you can just tell it what you want and then like sit back, kick your feet up, and it just like falls into your lap. And it doesn't quite work that way. There's some steps that you need to take. You have to kind of work in tandem with the universe. And there's also the other half of my book. My book is in two parts, right? Part of it is creating the life of your dreams, getting really clear on your vision so that you can live a life that you really love living, and using the law of attraction and quantum physics to get there, and then navigating that gap between where you are now and that dream life. But the other half of the book is removing all of the obstacles that keep the law of attraction from working for you. So things like your unconscious programming, your belief system, repressed emotions, holding on to grudges, not forgiving people. So I think all of that kind of plays into it. There's a lot of unlearning of belief systems that has to happen. But to answer your question about how to use the law of attraction specifically, or how to manifest, it starts with your belief system and your thoughts, but those really trigger your emotions. So if you can feel the emotions of what it would be like to really have that thing. And this is why people say gratitude is so important, because gratitude's a great one. Because if you can feel gratitude for something that you don't have yet, it tricks your mind or the universe or source or whatever you want to say into thinking that it's already there. And the universe doesn't know the difference between you imagining it and it really happening. So feeling the emotion is really important, and then taking steps towards it. And this is really important. And I just want to say it's not the same thing as working hard for your goals, because you never underestimate the power of a small step, right? From one small step, the right people might show up on your path to help you along. Doors that weren't even there will appear and open, but you have to take those little steps, because it creates momentum for the universe. And then the universe takes it over from there, right? You don't have to worry about the how, but you have to get on that right frequency with the emotions you're feeling, take steps, and then also remove all the crap that's blocking you from getting there. And that's kind of how it works.
Okay. So coming back to, and I'm taking a deep dive into quantum physics myself lately. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza and his work, but I've been reading his books, and he's great. Yeah. And he talks a lot about quantum physics and how it works. And basically my understanding is that everything is energy, right? I am energy, you're energy. These desks that we're sitting at are energy. Everything physical that you can see is basically 99.999999% energy and like 0.000001% matter. But we perceive it as matter because that's what we see. And so we think that the world is actually mostly matter when it's mostly energy. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, but also if you think about this, everything that's made of matter is made up of atoms, right? Everything in our universe. But the atom isn't a physical thing. And, if you think back in like junior high or high school, you might have been taught that the atom is this like tangible structure. But quantum physicists have actually shown that the atom is made up of an invisible vortex of spinning energy. So to imagine it, if you think about, have you ever seen the wind kind of pick up some leaves and spin them around like a mini tornado? So to imagine an atom, think of that and then just take the leaves out. And it's just literally spinning energy. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, I love his work as well, talks about what would happen if you try to see it under a microscope, an atom. He said from far away, it would look like a blurry sphere. the closer you got to it, the less in focus it would be. And then right when you were on top of it with a microscope, it would just disappear. You would see nothing, just a physical void, because the atom isn't anything tangible or physical. So what is matter then, right? When you say like some of this is made of matter, it's all energy, right? All of it is energy. So, things appear to us as particles, but they're really waves. And that's why quantum physics is amazing, because it backs up all the things that spirituality and these mystics and teachers have been saying, and these ancient civilizations have been saying. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the new way of describing mysticism, but it's all one and the same.
Yes, absolutely. And so if everything is energy, if that's what we're saying, really everything is energy, when we are trying to manifest something, we're basically trying to manipulate that energy or get that energy to work for us.
Yeah, I think another way of thinking about it, and I used to think about it that way for a long time, that like we're manipulating energy. But quantum physics also says, the many worlds interpretation says, that there are an infinite number of parallel realities. Okay. And so think about it like this. Every time you have to make a choice, your timeline branches. So the version of you who is living that choice goes on the same branch. And then there's another version of you who goes off on another branch, living out that other choice that you didn't make. And then each time those two versions of you have to make a choice, the timeline splits off again. And so there are an infinite number of timelines or branches starring you as the lead actor. Now, quantum physics, the many worlds theory, backs this up, and it says that every possible future state exists out there in a state of rest, just waiting for you to choose it. So everything you can imagine and everything you can't exists on one of these timelines. So rather than trying to thinking about it, rather than thinking about trying to manipulate energy, think about it as trying to just move onto that timeline where that thing already exists, right? Because there is already a version of you out there who has that dream job or that perfect health or that perfect relationship. And they call it quantum jumping, right? It's kind of the buzzword for that. But it's about aligning with that frequency and that vibration. And that all comes from your emotions you feel and following your passion, right? And making those choices. So, stepping outside of your comfort zone and taking that leap of faith can actually really pay off,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's all, this quantum physics stuff is really complicated. In my opinion, it's very complicated, and I am reading a lot on it, but it's like almost headache inducing a little bit, like trying to wrap your brain around it, because it's such a different way of thinking about reality than we were taught to think about reality. So it's a lot to comprehend, but it's also fascinating and, again, resonating very true. So if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, yeah, I really want this job, or I really want, some love in my life, or I really want to find my passion and my purpose, how do I manifest this in my life? What do you tell them to do? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different exercises I have in my book and a few different meditations. But it's about getting really clear on what you want. It's about taking steps towards that thing that you want. And again, putting yourself in that higher emotional state. So if you can get really clear on it and in your journaling, and you can take steps towards it, like literally put in your calendar, this week at this time, I'm going to do this thing to move me closer to my dreams. And then you can sit in meditation and go into that alpha or theta brainwave state and really feel it and really see it. That's the magic ingredients. Like that thing is going to come to you. It's not even a question of if, but when. And it's also, as long as you can remove your doubts, right? As long as you can remove your fears, your doubts, your worries, all those things I was talking about before. Because, and not to like scare anyone, but it's important to understand this piece of it. 95% of your day, you are driven by your unconscious thoughts. And it's like this program that runs based on your past and everything that happened before age 7 and your belief system and your thoughts and your emotions, because psychologists say that 70 to 90% of people's thoughts are negative and repetitive. So you might live 20 more years, but most people are living the same year 20 different times because nothing's changing. So 95% of your day is running on this unconscious program. So you might be doing all the right things, right? You might be, journaling. You might be having that vision board. You might be thinking positive and sitting in meditation and doing all those things. But unless you unlearn all of that belief system that was imposed upon you, unless you undo that conditioning, you're going to be sabotaging yourself 95% of the day. So that's why my book and my course and all of this works both sides, right? Let's remove all of those limiting beliefs and obstacles so that we can clear the path ahead.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea. So I understand the concept of, how we basically have a certain number of thoughts per day on average, but the very vast majority of those thoughts are the same thoughts playing on a loop in our mind. And if we're not aware of that, those thoughts are impacting how we feel, and then they're impacting the choices we make and the behaviors that we are involved in, and then that directly impacts our life. And it's one of the reasons why I love meditation. A lot of people will say to me, I can't meditate because every time I sit down to meditate, I just have 1,000 thoughts running through my head. And they think that they're supposed to be able to stop the thoughts, to stop thinking, which is really, it's such a barrier to people wanting to meditate. And it's so untrue, because one of the beautiful gifts of meditation is the ability to observe your thoughts. It's to be able to see the thoughts and see them without attachment. And so you can know what is the unconscious programming. You can start to see the unconscious programming that's running in your brain all the time when you're not paying attention. And then you can, once you see it, you can either choose to believe it or not believe it, and choose to change it or not to change it. And that is really powerful in your life.
Absolutely. It's like my mentor, Mary Morrissey, says, notice what you're noticing. Right. And if you're just running on that hamster wheel all the time, you're not aware of it. So so quieting your mind and really paying attention is so important.
Yeah. Paying attention to the thoughts and then not judging them either, right? That's a huge piece too. Like even if you're having a thought that is not so helpful in your life, you can still have the thought, see that you're having it, and then release it without judgment. And I think that's a part of becoming aware of what you're unaware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you talk about, things being uncomfortable and the importance of that in helping you grow in your life. And so can you give us a little more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting outside of your comfort zone is of the utmost importance, because it's like we were just saying, right? If you're doing the same thing every single day, like this is hard to hear. If you have the results you have in life because of the things you've been doing, right? Because of the actions, the beliefs, the thoughts, the emotions, that repetitive loop. So in order to have something you've never had before, you have to do something you've never done before. And you have to get outside of your comfort zone, because that is where growth happens. And, it's even if you try and you fail, you just fail forward. You learn from the mistake. We are here as humans to learn and to grow and to level up in our consciousness. And you can't do any of that if you're just staying the same and you're doing the same thing. It's the definition of insanity, right? Like doing the same thing over and over again, expecting things to change. And so many people are having the same beliefs, the same thoughts, the same emotions. They're doing the same things, the same habits. And then they're wondering why they're not getting the life of their dreams that they're hoping and praying for. Well, it's because nothing's changing. You're not breaking the pattern. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think in life, sometimes if we don't break the pattern, life can break the pattern for us, right? Life can really hand us something that pushes us way outside of our comfort zone. And then we have the choice as to how we're going to respond to that. And if we're going to allow that thing to help us to grow, or just get angry and bitter and stuck.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you nailed it. You always have a choice, right? You can choose to forgive and get better, or you can choose to hold on to resentment and get bitter and fall deeper into unconsciousness. And that's why every tragedy, every heartbreak, every trauma, everything that you go through in life has a hidden Easter egg inside of it. And if you find that, tremendous healing, leveling up, and growth takes place. And, people think I'm crazy, but I'm at the point where I almost welcome challenges when they come, because I know on the other side of that is tremendous growth. Even if it's difficult in the moment, that's how things change. And you totally nailed it when you said, if you don't change, the universe is going to make you change. So you might as well make the choice for yourself, right? Make it a little more comfortable for yourself.
Right. One of my mentors always says, life is so lifey. And I love that expression. It makes me like giggle every time, because life is just so perfect. Life is so lifey. Like it's so up and down and all over the place. And it will hand you what you need. Then you have the choice as to whether accept it or try to like hide yourself from it and push it away.
Yeah, I love that too. And, I think you made me think it's really important to bring up that just because you've become conscious or awakened or aware or enlightened or whatever, it doesn't mean life's not going to keep happening, right? There's still going to be challenges. There's still going to be adversities, but you have this different mentality going into them. And that's when you can use all of those things as that launch pad to grow. But it's not like you awaken and then life is perfect and beautiful, right? We go through seasons all the time.
All the time. And I think though, when you've practiced this enough, even when you're in a really difficult season, you have a little bit more centered, grounded faith that you will make it through this season. And you will, even if you cannot see it at the time, find out what this gift is trying to teach you.
Exactly. And you can look for that too. And because if you can learn to thrive in winter, you can really thrive in spring, right? Once all those seeds start to take fruition and new growth is happening, it becomes an explosion of growth if you've learned to thrive through winter.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I love that analogy. I love any analogy that like helps people understand better what we're talking about, because it's always helped me so much when someone uses something that is an experience of my everyday life. And I'm like, oh yeah, I like totally get that now. That's great. That's great.
Absolutely.
All right. So how about ego? Let's talk a little bit about ego, because you mentioned that in the book, and how it can hold us back from growing. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I was watching a Wayne Dyer clip and he called ego Earth Guide only. And I was like, wow, that is so great.
That's
I love
cool.
that.
Yeah.
So the way I think of it is ego is kind of like the software that comes with being human. So we choose our life before we are incarnated. And we do that because it's going to set us up to learn the specific lessons that we are here to learn. So I kind of like to think of it like you've been dropped in this video game world, right? You get to choose your avatar. You get to choose, you choose how you're going to be born, how you're going to die, who your parents are, what you're going to look like, where you're going to live, because all these things kind of ready the soil, plant the seeds, and then it's up to you if you grow. And you also choose those big life circumstances, which is why, I said in the beginning, I wouldn't undo any of that I've been through. It was that catalyst that I needed. So if we're thinking about it like we have this avatar, when you are playing a video game and your avatar gets injured, the real you doesn't feel that, right? So there is a part of you, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, your oversoul, that is on the other side of the veil, most of you. And when your human body gets hurt, that doesn't get hurt. So like nothing that happens here on earth can hurt the real you. But we have this body that we're operating in, and we have this ego, and it's the software program that comes with it. And ego's job is to keep the body safe because it thinks the body is who you are. So it thinks the world is everything that it can see with its five senses and nothing more. So if you think about it from ego's point of view, the world is a really scary place, right? This body is fragile. There's deranged gunmen, there's natural disasters, there's car accidents or plane crashes, or there's so many things that can just wipe you out from existence, right? So ego gets really scared. And so ego wants to protect the body because, again, it thinks this is who you are and it wants to keep you safe. That's its job. And by the way, I don't want anyone to hate their ego because it serves a really important purpose. Like if there's oncoming traffic coming at you, ego is going to make you step out of the way, right? It's doing its job. But it's like trying to hand over a really big leadership role to a 5-year-old. It's just not meant to be in charge of everyday life. And it runs these programs based on fear and doubt and worry and insecurity and judgment and blaming others and victimization, because it's all meant to keep you safe and keep you small. It doesn't want you stepping outside of your comfort zone because that's scary. That's the unknown. But it doesn't understand that on the other side of your comfort zone is where growth happens. So ego isn't necessarily a bad thing. It keeps you safe, but you have to learn to unidentify with it and know that it has its purpose, it has its job, but it's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You are something so much greater.
Yes. And how do you think people can feel that, like really feel that internally? What are some things that people can do to start disassociating themselves from the ego and saying the ego is just part of my avatar, part of this human experience, but not who I am at my core?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with just the knowledge in the beginning, which is why my book is called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, because changing your perspective about all of these topics that we're covering and all the other topics in the book is kind of the first step. Because when you understand that, then you can start to catch it a little bit. And it comes back to what we were talking about before, is notice what you're noticing. Being aware of this program that you're running, this
Mm-hmm.
software program based on fear or based on judgment or based on victimization or whatever it is that you're running, and knowing that that's not you, that's simply a software program. So I think becoming aware of it is really the first step.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about triggers in the book. I can't remember exactly what you said, but basically that, if you feel triggered, I think is what you said, it's like an opportunity to see where you're not free, where the software program is coming in and you have an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, I actually love the way you just said that better than the way I said it in the book. But yeah, what I said is your triggers are your mirrors, right? They show you unhealed aspects of you, because someone who is healed knows that the actions and words and circumstances of others and outside situations have nothing to do with them. But when you're triggered, you can get offended by pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Right. So it shows you, it's this opportunity, it's this teacher. It shows you, hey, if you're having this strong emotional reaction to this thing, that means it's something that you need to work on that you haven't worked through yet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you had already healed that aspect of you, you wouldn't be having this emotional reaction to it.
Yes. And I think you mentioned in a book, in your book, The 4 Agreements, where it's a great book. And we've actually referenced it on other episodes of this podcast. And this particular portion of the book, which is don't take anything personally. And it's a really hard concept for people. It was a really hard concept for me to think that, someone else could be doing something that in my perception was just downright wrong to me, and to not take that personally. It's a really hard concept for people to wrap their heads around.
It's a really hard concept. And it's also just really hard to embody that,
Yes.
because we live in this world where we think that everything is happening to us, right? But really life is happening for you. And there's a teaching story that I share in the book related to that. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to share it, because I think it kind of illustrates that idea. So if you imagine that you're sitting on your couch and you hear outside this meowing, and you go outside to check it out, and way in the far corner of your yard, you see this scrawny black and white cat. And you think, oh, I love kitties. I'm going to go touch that kitty. I'm going to go pet that kitty, right? And you go over to pet the cat. And as soon as you get close to it, it arches its back and it hisses at you and it swats at you. So what does your mind say? That's an evil cat. That's a mean cat. That cat's kind of an asshole, right?
Right.
But if you stay and you see that cat, you allow yourself to see that cat, you might notice its back leg is bleeding. And your mind starts to go, okay, this animal's injured. And if you keep staying, you keep allowing yourself to really see that cat, you might notice hiding behind it are 4 tiny baby kittens with their eyes still closed. And suddenly your perspective shifts to one of compassion, concern, empathy. And you could do that with the people in your life, because the jerk that's flipping you off in traffic, or the person that's being rude to you in the grocery checkout line, they're coming from a place of their own pain and their own fear. And that's it. It's their own stuff. And everyone has its own lens through which they view the world. And everyone is just projecting their own reality onto everything and onto everyone else. But people are not out there, for the most part, trying to cause chaos and harm in your life, right? They're just worried. So there's actually, there's this poem I love by Lane Thomas. It's called On the Day You Read This. But there's this line in there that I love that says, no one's really judging you when you walk into a room. And all they really want to know is if you're judging them.
It's so true.
Yeah, it gives me chills every time, because it's like everyone's wrapped up in their own shit, in their own head. I hope I can swear on your show.
You absolutely can. We are a fan of swearing on the show.
Perfect. But it's just everyone's so concerned about themselves that they're not realizing how they're impacting you. Yes. And meanwhile, you use this great word, perception. You're perceiving that they've hurt you in these ways, but it's just your lens, right? Your programming that you're looking through.
Yeah, so absolutely. I try to teach this to my kids, and it's a really hard lesson for kids as well. You know, if someone's not being nice to them and things like that. And I try to make them understand that although the action or the behavior is not right, I'm not calling the action or the behavior right. It is not about you. It is about their own pain and what's going on inside of them. So you can't take it personally, because it's not about you. They're projecting it onto you because you're there, and it's, you know, it's making them feel better in some way in that moment. But it doesn't really have anything to do with you, even though the behavior itself, we can say, is really not a good behavior. So distinguishing the person from the behavior, from what the behavior means. And these are all, you know, separate things.
And it's hard. It's hard when your feelings are hurt, right? Especially as a kid. It's hard as an adult too. You know, you just made me think, I made this little video. I make a bunch of reels and put them online all the time. And I made one about how, you know, we should feel bad for internet trolls, because, you know, how bad is their life that's what they're doing with their free time? Because your time, energy, and attention are your currency in this world. Yeah. And they're using it to attack strangers online. And I posted it on YouTube, and I got this really interesting comment. Someone commented, I do it because it's cathartic for me. And so I was like, wow, like, thank you for admitting that. That's huge that you just were that vulnerable and put it out there. But it's so interesting, because that's the same thing. It's like healing for them in some way, meaning they do have some deep pain or fear or something going on where they feel the need to attack another person in order to feel better.
Yeah, in that moment, right? Yeah. It's interesting, because probably in that moment, it's like a release for them. It's not going to heal them. It's not going to actually be healing. But in that moment, it's helping them relieve something that they're probably feeling in their mind and body. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. It's so fascinating. Yeah. And I like what you said too about, like, it's not excusing anyone's behaviors, because I think that's important when we teach forgiveness. Like, this is not about excusing anyone's behaviors, because forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for you. Right? If you're forgiving someone, you don't even have to talk to them again.
Right.
You know, it's an internal process. And there's this great Buddhist quote that goes, holding on to anger is like holding onto a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else, right? Like, you're the one that gets burned. And there's iterations of that.
Yes. I like the one that says, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting it to kill the other person. Like, it's the same concept. Yeah.
It's the same concept. And like, poison's such a good word for it, because it poisons you. And, you know, if anyone's sitting here listening, like rolling your eyes thinking, oh, what so-and-so did to me is unforgivable. No, it's not. Everything is forgivable, because it's not about the other person. It's so that you can release your anger, your hurt, your sadness, your resentment, your whatever, so that you can flourish and heal and go on to live your best life.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so true. It's so true. And this is to say, I mean, I firmly believe all of this. And I also want to acknowledge how hard it is. Right.
Oh, it's the hardest thing ever. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're not sitting here saying that this is, easy. No, this is really hard. That's why it makes you grow, is because it's so hard. Growing isn't easy. Growing is hard work. Really worth it? really rewarding, but hard.
It's so hard. And like I said earlier, like life's going to keep happening. So you might have gone through something really traumatic, really difficult, and forgived all those people. And then 2 decades later, you go through something else that's really difficult. And it might take you a couple of years to get to the point of forgiveness again. You know, thank you for saying that, because that's why they call it the hard inner work, because none of this is easy, but on the other side of it is so much reward and so much freedom and so much lightness.
Yes. So true. So true. Okay. So you put our thoughts into 3 categories. You say our thoughts can help us or harm us, and that we have 3 categories: our wants, our fears, and where we are unfulfilled. And so what is the benefit of like looking at those thoughts and those 3 different categories of thoughts?
Yeah. So this ties directly to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about notice what you're noticing and trying to get out of that loop, right? But they give us clues into what our true passion is, what our true purpose is. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we'll look at the 2 main ones, like what you're wanting and where you're feeling unfulfilled. So if you are rolling out of bed every morning and it's Monday and you're like, oh, I don't want to go to work, you have to drag yourself to work, that's a pretty good, you know, indicator that you're feeling unfulfilled with your career. You know, if you're feeling jealous of a coworker who got a raise, that might be a really good indicator that you're feeling unfulfilled with your compensation. If you're sitting there daydreaming about how you want to be a famous actor and live in LA and live this glamorous lifestyle or whatever it is, not that that's even glamorous, but that might be a thought that's telling you what it is you want. So, you know, thoughts that feel like what you want are like daydreaming, right? This excitement, this passion, this longing, this wanting something so bad, you're aching for it. And thoughts that tell you where you're unfulfilled feel like jealousy or resentment or bitterness or anger or, you know, insecurities. So, you know, noticing all of these things, because our thoughts really are messengers and they're cluing us into what our true passion and purpose are. And that's always kind of shifting throughout life too, right? So paying attention to these little clues, these little cues are going to help you navigate the way. It's funny, I was actually just before this listening to a TikTok with Bashar. Do you know who Bashar is?
No.
He's so I forget what the man's name who channels him, but he's like a channeled entity, but you would love his stuff. It's really, really fascinating. And he's been doing it since like the 60s or something. Yeah. But he was just talking about how, you know, our higher self that I was referencing before, most of our higher self sits on the other side of the veil. And it works in terms of energy. And our physical self here works in terms of action. So our higher self clues us in, according to Bashar, clues us in on what our true passion and purpose is based on like what you get excited about, what you get passionate about, what you have that hunger for. And it's giving you clues from the other side, like, hey, this is your purpose. This is the path you're supposed to take. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And then it's up to you on this side in this physical body to take action steps towards that. And I loved that so much. It's like such a simple way of summing it up.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I love that too. And you've actually used the term the other side of the veil a couple of times. Yeah. And just for our listeners who might not be familiar with really what that means, can you describe what you mean when you say that?
Yeah, totally. Thanks for asking. So where you go when you die, where you came from before you were born, you know, the whole idea is that we all come from the same thing. We all come from source. We're all pieces of the same. We're all parts of the same whole. And Earth is a school. And it's one of many, many, many schools. And we are here to learn specific lessons that you are here to learn your individual lessons, to grow, to level up. We're here to learn how to use the law of attraction. And if we quote unquote fail this lesson, like we just reincarnate again as a human in a similar situation with similar people, and we do it again. And you have as many tries as you want to pass this grade, if you will. And if you pass it, you move on to another school, and that might be on another planet, in another dimension, as another being, as a star, you know. And if you want to really dive deep into this stuff, I really recommend checking out Dolores Cannon's work. It's phenomenal. But on the other side is real life. It's almost like we're living in a dream world right now. And when we go to the other side, we wake up. And this is corroborated by countless people who have had NDEs. I've gone through down so many NDE rabbit holes, and it's fascinating because they all report similar things, right? That they go on the other side and they see all these timelines happening simultaneously, that there's just nothing but pure unconditional love, that they're forgiven for everything, that there's this school and this was just for lessons, and it's amazing. It's so cool.
That is so cool.
So,
yeah, I will definitely check out her work, because I'm not familiar with it. All these concepts I'm all familiar with, but not that particular person. And I always say it's like polishing the looking glass. Like, so we're trying to see to the other side, which is reality, right? We're trying to see into reality, but we've got this really foggy looking glass. And then every time we learn a lesson, every time we like grow and get closer to our higher selves, we're like polishing off the looking glass a little bit more and seeing a little bit clearer. And so to see, we're like trying to peek through to that other side of the veil, but we can't see with all this crap, so to speak, on our glass. And all of these growth experiences are helping us to see reality as it is. And reality is not what we think it is. It's
exactly. I love that analogy so much. And the reality we see around us, this is an illusion, and it's here for our own growth.
Yeah.
And real life, quote unquote, is on the other side. So we're just here. It's almost like this simulation that was built for our own growth. So it's really exciting to think about it all.
It is. I recently heard someone say, this was another podcast I was listening to, and I cannot remember who it was, but they basically said that we're in like a training ground, that Earth School is a training ground for reality, which is actually quite similar to where we are currently, but that we need to learn all these lessons before we can go to this other side that may even look a lot like life here, but only with souls that have really done the growth and the learning that they need to do. So I thought that was an interesting concept. It's the first time that I ever heard that.
That is interesting. And it reminds me of that theory that's out there that there's a new Earth emerging. And Dolores Cannon talks a lot about that too, where the idea is like the souls who are ready for it will go with the new Earth, and those who aren't will stay with the old Earth. And it's in the process of splitting right now. And that's not to say that anyone's better than anyone else. It's just like, that's the path they choose. And then, they reincarnate again. And
correct. Yes. I mean, you wouldn't send a kindergartner to college, right? So it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the kindergartner. It means that they're a kindergartner and they still have to go through all these other levels of school before they can go off to college. So it's not a judgment on, it's not a morality issue. It's just a learning issue. It's just a knowledge gap. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about a manifest memoir?
I could do that. Sure.
Yeah.
So it's the exercise that I use with my students, and I talk it over in the book. So it's a way to get really, really clear on your vision. So, some people are like, this is what I want. This is the life of my dreams. Like, this is how my house is going to look. This is my career. They just have it down. And then there's people that are like, I don't know what I want, but I know I'm not feeling fulfilled right now, right? I know I'm meant for more wealth, more impact on the world, more connected relationships. I want to be a better parent, better child, better partner, better whatever. So this is a way to help people get really clear. And I like to say, like, even if you know what you want, do it, because it's going to help you realize things that you didn't even know you wanted. So it starts with what we were talking about earlier, with noticing your thoughts and putting them in those categories of what you want, where you're feeling unfulfilled. So I have people rate each area of their life. I break life into 7 groups, and I have them rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, each category, and then list out what it would take for them to rate each category a 10. And we don't worry about how, outlandish it sounds. It's just, what would it take for this to be a 10 out of 10, your career to be a 10 out of 10, your relationships, whatever. And then I have them write what I have called your manifest memoir. So it's imagine that you're running into an old friend that you haven't seen for 3 years. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, how's your life? Tell me about your life." And you start to tell them about your life, all those things, but imagining it's the 10 out of 10. And you tell it in the present or the past tense, as if it's already happened. So that's the idea behind it. And you write it down, and it's this long narrative by the end of it. Mine's like 10 pages. And you read it every night before you go to sleep, before you're going to be in your subconscious mind for the next 8 hours or however long you sleep. And this idea of just putting yourself in that state, it makes it come true. It's amazing. And I've seen it happen for so many people.
So I have 2 questions for you about this. So first one is, what if you are saying, I guess what my question is, does intention matter? So let's say you're like, well, I want a $2 million house and a Porsche and, a vacation home in Cabo. And I don't know, all these things. And you just want it for status and symbol and power and that type of thing. Does that impact your ability to manifest it versus someone who is trying to manifest through intentions of service, of love, of peace, of generosity, those types of more higher vibration emotions?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting that you were talking about that, because I have 2-part answer. So one, tangibles is one of the categories, and a tangible is anything you can touch, like a car, a house, a pet dog, whatever it is. And we tend to have this idea that we shouldn't want tangibles in the spiritual community, right? Because there's guilt and shame associated with that. And, we have these ideas about people with money. And, we're here to have experiences as humans. And part of what we're here to do is to learn how to use the law of attraction. So I ask people, like, why is it that you want those things? Like, you can say you want more money, but is it because you want to live in a better school district for your kids? Is it because you want to start an amazing business that's going to help the world? Is it just so that you don't feel like you have to live another day in a job where you feel like your soul is getting sucked dry again? Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting. Your question is interesting because you're saying, like, what if the intention is purely like a status symbol? Mm-hmm. I mean, I would encourage that person to figure out, like, what it is behind that, right? Because there's something that you're going for, some emotion that you're going for on the other side of that, right? It's not really the Porsche you want. It's not really the house you want. There's something that you're trying to fulfill there, right? So I would work with that person to, like, work on the emotion of it, right? Because it even helps when you're trying to manifest these things to manifest the feeling that you want. Because we all say, like, we want money, but it's not money you want. Like, you want a piece of paper that's, like, not even backed by gold, right? Like, it's bullshit. Like, you don't want money. You want a feeling of accomplishment, or you want a feeling of pride, or you want a feeling of freedom. Money is a symbol for freedom. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like, what is it that you really want? And it's not necessarily that tangible thing. It's like, let's get down to it. Like, what is it that you're really going for? What feeling, what emotion? And then we can work with that a little bit more.
Okay.
And I think I actually just added a module about money to my course for this reason, because so many people have these stories about money, right? Like, either they were told when they were growing up, like, money doesn't grow on trees, which is the most obnoxious sentence ever.
Yes,
right?
My parents use that all the time.
Did they? Yeah.
They did.
Yeah, and it's terrible. Or, like, maybe you had money and your friends didn't, so, like, you were ashamed of it. Or maybe your friends had money and you didn't, and they would come to your house and be like, why is your bedroom so small? So we all have these stories about money, and money is not going to go where it's not wanted, and it's not going to stay where it's not valued. So rather than trying to focus on manifesting the money, we try to focus on, like, what is it that you really want? And I don't know if you were following the news when that that submersible that was going to see the Titanic wreckage
Mhm.
imploded, which was like
Mhm.
horrific, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they found out those people knew like minutes before of their
Mm.
impending doom, and then it actually like dropped like hundreds of feet underwater. Like it's not like, it wasn't a quick thing like they originally thought. And all of these news outlets were covering it on social media. And I don't know if you read the comments on those news articles, but I read some of them, and they were awful.
Yeah.
All of these people were commenting on like, well, screw them, they're billionaires. Eat the rich, like whatever, they like deserve it. And like it was like comment after comment after comment after comment. And it's like, do you think that those people are manifesting money, wealth, abundance, financial freedom in their life?
Mm-hmm.
No way, because they have this preconceived notion about what it means to be wealthy.
Yeah.
Right? What it means to have material wealth anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this negative thing to them. So they're never going to manifest that.
Yeah.
There's
That's
this, so there's
that's
actually,
great.
there's, okay, one more story. So there's this great it's a story Mary Morrissey told me. So she was my mentor, and she mentored directly under the late great Bob Proctor. So the first time she ever saw Bob, she drove like hours to go see him, and she didn't know that much about him. This was like years and years and years ago. And she just knew he was this spiritual man, and he was giving a lecture on how to bring money into your life. So she's in this auditorium with like a couple hundred people, and he walks out on stage. He doesn't say anything to anyone, and he just looks at everyone. And then he reaches in his pocket and he pulls out his wallet. And he opens his wallet and he pulls out this big wad of cash, and he fans out the cash, and it's all 50s and 100s. And he says, the first thing he says the whole time, he goes, "This is money. I love money." And he starts kissing the money. And Mary in her head, and this is before he's like well known, and Mary in her head is like, "Oh my God, this is disgusting. This guy's a pig. I bet he's not even spiritual. Like, I can't believe I drove all this way." And so finally he stops, he puts the money in the wallet, puts the wallet in his pocket, and he goes, "Okay, now let me ask you all something. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you were thinking, this guy's greedy. This guy's a pig. I bet this guy's not even spiritual." And everyone's raising their hand, and Mary's looking around like, "Oh my gosh, he read my mind." He goes, okay, put your hands down. What if I had walked out on stage holding the hand of this cute little 4-year-old boy? And we walked out together, and I put him in front of me, and then I held him up from behind for you to see. And I said, "This is my grandson. I love my grandson." When he starts kissing, I start kissing my grandson. He goes, "How many of you would have the same reaction?" And it's like, no one raised their hands. And he says, "Well, you have a story about money. Money is not going to go where it's not wanted." So, it's all about mindset and changing your perspective.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And, so much of the things we judge as good or bad are neither. They're net neutral. They are net neutral. They are a tool, and you can use them for good or you can use them for evil. And, I tell my kids this about social media. I'm like, social media gets, I actually don't let my kids have social media at this point because I think that they're not like emotionally mature. Like, I wouldn't hand my kindergartner a chainsaw, right? Okay. So kindergartner is not able to handle a chainsaw yet. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't mean the chainsaw is bad. It means that they are not at a developmental stage to be safe using the chainsaw. The chainsaw is net neutral. And the same with a knife, right? We can use a knife and we can use it to prepare a beautiful, delicious meal, or we can use it to harm someone. Yeah. And so net neutral, money is net neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It is a tool, and used properly, it can be used to do really wonderful things in the world, and used improperly, it can be harmful. And I think you're right. People have a story about money, and if they don't have it, the people who do have it seem to be the enemy. And money is an energetic, like you're saying, it doesn't go where it's not wanted. So money is an energetic, and it's going to flow to people who are drawing it to them from their story, the story that they're creating around money. So it's great. I love what you said about that.
Yeah. And I love what you said about things being net neutral. And it's not just objects. It's information, it's people, it's things that happen to you, it's things that people say and do to you. Everything is neutral, but your response is not, right? The way that you process that information or that situation is not neutral. Yeah. But your past experience with anything is what dictates your understanding of it. And it just goes back to that lens that we have, right? And it's that's good and bad is completely subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So my second question related to that is, and I would put myself in this category for a long time, and I'm just going to adjust. I'm sorry, I can't take it anymore. The sun is coming in. It's hitting my face. I'm trying to tolerate it. And it's like really driving me nuts. I would have put myself in this category for a long time, but I do think I am coming out of it. But I would have said, well, I'm not happy with what's going on in my life. And I do feel like my job is not where I'm meant to be and I'm unfulfilled and this, that, and the other. But I can't manifest what would fulfill me because I have no idea. I don't know. And so how would you help people who say that, who say, I'd love to, I'm recognizing these thoughts that every time I have to go to work, I'm like, oh, I got to go to work today. But if you ask me what I would like to do instead, I have no idea. How can people get past that hump?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about with the manifest memoir exercise, is helping people get really clear. And I think that's where actually writing down those 7 categories of your life and rating them on a scale, and then figuring out like what would make me happy, and not having any judgment about it, not thinking, oh, this is so outlandish, this will never happen, not thinking, oh, how would this ever happen? Just truthfully, in your career, what is it that would make you happy? And maybe it's not, oh, I want to be this position in this company. Maybe it's, I want to be really valued. I want to be really heard. I want to have an impact where I'm helping people, things like that.
Even if they can't put a specific, like, I want to do this specific thing. I don't know what that specific thing is, but I know that whatever it is, these are the characteristics I want it to have.
Yeah. And the emotions and the impact it will have on me too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's totally really helpful. That's really helpful. Yeah. Because a long time I was really stuck and I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I want, but I would have been able to tell you those things. I would have been able to tell you how I want it, whatever it was to make me feel. I just couldn't tell you what the specific thing was. So that's great advice for people.
Yeah. And I think also that's kind of if we're talking about things being a tool, right? That's kind of the tool of working in a job you don't like. You know exactly what you don't want, or being in a relationship you're not happy with. Now you know what it is you don't want and what it is that would make you feel better, what it is you do want in that next one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And well, that was also something I used to say all the time. I'm like, I just have a growing list of things I don't want, but I still don't know what I do want.
Hey, and that's where you start, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely where you start.
But I think that's really common, by the way. I think that's really, really common.
I do too. And I do think it's probably why we're seeing more and more people kind of creating their own opportunities, because they're not really finding what is lighting their soul on fire in things that are already available out there. And so more and more, I think people are saying, I'm going to just take an alternative path and create what I want, which is amazing.
It is. And I feel like a lot of that was born out of the pandemic, right? So something good came out of it.
Absolutely. Many good things actually came out of it, in my opinion. I mean, there was a lot of really hard things too, not to minimize that, but there was also a lot of growth that came out of it. So that was fantastic. That is, a good way of looking at it. Okay. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the illness piece in the book, because this is a sensitive topic. And I myself have chronic migraine, and I've been trying to figure out how to heal myself for many years. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, to talk about it a little bit. It is, like I said, it's a sensitive topic. So tell us what you mean in the book when you say you can heal yourself.
Yeah, it is a sensitive topic, and it goes back to our belief systems, right? We are taught that we don't have power within us to heal ourselves. We need to go to an outside source, right? But then you look at things like the placebo effect, and the placebo effect is actually, they say that 1/3 of medical healings can be attributed to the placebo effect. So it's proof that we can actually heal ourselves by our thoughts and our emotions alone. And there's some really, really cool studies that have been done that have actually backed it up. And I give a couple of them in the book. Dr. Bruce Moseley was this orthopedic knee surgeon, And he proved that the placebo effect works on something like surgery, not just sugar pills. So he took patients and divided them into 3 groups, and they all needed the same kind of knee surgery. So in the first group, what did he do? He just shaved down some of their bone. In the second group, I don't remember exactly. I think he like cleaned debris out of their knee. And then in the third group, he pretended to do surgery. He put them under, he made an incision. He was asking like his assistants for scalpel and all of that. He even splashed saline solution into the cut for effect and stitched it up. And then he gave all 3 patients the same recovery instructions, including physical therapy. And he didn't tell the patients what group they were in for 2 years. And the people who had the fake surgery healed just as well, if not better, than all the other groups. They didn't have to use canes anymore. They were able to go on and do activities and live active, pain-free lives. There's another one that I really love. Dr. Ellen Langer, she was in the psychology department at Harvard. So in the 70s, she did this amazing experiment where she took a group of 5 elderly men and she put them in a house and told them to behave as though it was 1959. So they were picked up in this old car and brought there. The house was completely decked out like it was the 50s, like the Ed Sullivan Show played on the TV. There were records from the time era, newspapers and magazines from the time. And they dressed like they were from the 50s, and there were no mirrors in the house, no accommodations made for the men's physical, abilities. Like no one helped them up the stairs with their luggage. And they were told to act as though it was 1959. So they had to talk about these historical events like they were current news. And, photos of their younger selves were on their nightstands. And the experiment only lasted 5 days. And there was a control group that stayed in a similar house, but they weren't instructed to act like it was 1959. And they took all of these vitals, all of these, health markers from both groups. And in just 5 days, the people in the test group, their vision improved. They were standing up taller. They looked physically younger. They were able to do all these things. They played a impromptu game of touch football on the lawn. They threw a dinner party. Like all of these amazing health things. And Langer was like, they put their mind in their body, and their bodies followed suit. Even physically looked younger. And then the BBC recreated it called The Young Ones with a group of elderly like years later, and they got this. Our minds are so powerful. And it's
so I heard you say basically that our minds are so powerful, and then you started cutting out after that.
Okay, I don't remember what else I said, but
so basically I think what you're trying to say is our minds are so powerful that we actually have the ability to heal ourselves if we can believe that we can heal ourselves. Is that what you're trying to say?
Exactly. And so there's another side of it too. There's the nocebo effect, which is the opposite. And the nocebo effect says that, we can make ourselves sick if we think we've been exposed to a toxic substance or a disease, or, that we're going to die. That's what I was talking about, that, people who are told that they have, 3 months left to live, most of the time will pass away in 3 months because they believe it. And I saw that happen with my dad, actually. He was told he went into hospice when he didn't really need to. And the doctors told him like he didn't have much longer, and he just believed them. So he just like laid in bed all day and kind of waited to die. And then after like months and months, it was like, well, wait, I'm not dying. And I was like, well, and he was like so bored. And I was like, well, why don't you get up and try and move around? So he got a physical therapist, and he kept saying like, I got conned. But like his muscles had atrophied by that point. But, being told or believing that you're sick or you've been exposed to something or that you're dying, we believe it. We can actually make ourselves sick with our thoughts alone.
Yeah. Well, so, I just want to be very clear for everyone listening to this. So do you believe that that we can heal all illness ourselves, or that this is something that can be a factor in illness, but not always?
I think a lot of times illness is something that we have to go through. It's part of our soul contract. It's part of that big life circumstance that we, signed up for before we incarnated. And sometimes that means that we can heal it. And sometimes healing it is the lesson that we need to go through. And sometimes there's something else going on that we need to go through. So no, I don't think you can always heal.
Okay. I just want to make that, clear. Anything else? I know I don't want to keep you too long because we've been on here forever. And like I said, I loved your book, so I could keep going and going. But I want to be mindful of your time. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you really, want to make sure listeners hear before we sign off here?
Yeah, I think what's really my message to leave with people is we're all in this together. We are all reflections of each other. We're all parts of the same. And people outside of ourselves might appear separate, but that's just part of the illusion. So when you make someone, this is why I'm so against cancel culture, right? When you make someone feel sadness or anger or shame or hurt, those feelings get sent out into the quantum field. And then it's kind of like the law of attraction for the masses, right? And then humanity as a whole gets more circumstances and people and situations that make people feel that way. And again, quantum physics backs this up with entanglement. Like what's happening, what someone does on one side of the planet deeply affects what someone else does. And, so many people are out there trying to fight for change, but you can't fight for something like peace, right? You can't say you want world peace and be fighting with your neighbor or your coworker. So the way to heal a sick society is by healing yourself first. And as you level up and you rise up to the next level, you become this light, this beacon for everyone around you, and you affect your friends, your family, your community. And it's this beautiful ripple effect. And then they start to come up to your level. You can give them a helping hand up, and then they affect people. And, rising tides lift all ships. This is how we heal the world. You heal yourself first, and then your outer world is reflected from your inner world. So I think that's the parting message I'd like to leave people with.
And I so deeply believe that. And it's, again, one of the motivators for starting this show. So I love that. And I'd like to point out that it's another topic we didn't have time to get into, but I'll just throw it out there for people reading your book to look into the 100 monkey effect and the other studies that you referenced in there about how, your behavior can impact the behavior of others that you're not even physically in contact with, and how amazing that is, and how we can change the world that way. So
there's
thank
so
you
much
for that.
more going on than we're aware of. Yeah.
So much more. And the studies that you referenced on meditation and how, meditators can impact the world, people meditating together. So we really are all connected, and we all impact one another, even if we don't actually have physical touch points with one another. And so that's huge. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Kris. And tell our guests what you offer. And nobody has to worry about writing it down right now, because I'm going to put it all in the show notes, but just let everybody know what you offer and where they can find you if they want to work with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do that. So I have a little gift for people. So my book is called Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It's available in audiobook, ebook, and paperback. You can get it anywhere you buy your books, but if you get it through this special URL, you can get the course that goes hand in hand with it for free. So the URL is changeyourmindtochangeyourreality.com/order book. And I know that's a mouthful, but luckily it'll be in the show notes. Thanks for doing that, Katie. And if you want to connect with me, I'm at krisashley.net. My handle is at Change Your Mind with Kris, and Kris is with a K. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. I'm all over. Come drop by, say hi. You can take my course. I have free workshops. I'm easy to find online.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you again for being here, and good luck on your move. You mentioned you were moving, so good luck on your move, and give your cute pooch a pet for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you.
Oh, of course. You too. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Okay, was that good or was that good? So much good stuff in there. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to apologize. I forgot there was a little glitch in the conversation where Kris and I actually had to log off our Zoom call and come back on. So you probably did hear a segment there that was a little bit interrupted. So I apologize for that. I hope it did not interfere with the value of the conversation. As far as today's mindfulness exercise, I had a really hard time picking because I could pick at least 10 from the conversation that we had. But I decided to pick something pretty simple. And when I say simple, simple does not mean easy, right? So there's a difference between simple and easy. Meditating is simple. Meditating is not easy, right? So the one I decided to pick for today was about purpose. That was one of the topics that we covered. And I asked Kris, how do we know what our purpose is? So I think it is not uncommon. In fact, I think it is very common that people are dissatisfied with maybe areas of their lives, but they don't know exactly what they want. They know that they're dissatisfied, but they don't know what they need to do to change it, to make themselves feel more aligned and on purpose. And so I want to give you the exercise of just thinking about the things. And I always encourage journaling as well, because I think there's some type of magic that happens when you put pen to paper and you let it flow. So I really encourage you to journal this out, but you can also just think about it. And I know there are some people out there who feel uncomfortable with journaling. They're afraid that someone's going to read it and they feel uncomfortable with that idea. So if you're one of those people, then I can offer this other option up to you, which is to journal about it and then burn it. And that's something that is done often actually in spiritual practices is to burn things. So if you're afraid someone's going to read it, I offer you that as an option, but there really is magic of bringing pen to paper or even just typing it out if you'd like to do that and then deleting the document afterwards. Something happens though when you start taking the thoughts in your head and putting them through your fingers. So I really highly encourage that if you want to try this exercise. But once again, you can always just think about it. So we often experience our higher self as being pulled towards something, feeling like there are things in our life that we cannot not do, right? We just have to do them. They're so much a part of our life. They're things that we get excited about, that we have a hunger for, that we're passionate about. And we don't often think of these things as our purpose. We just think of them as the things that we enjoy in our life. But usually within those things, there are big clues as to what our purpose is. And so what I'm offering to you this week is to sit down and really think about the things that make you excited to be alive, that you can't wait to do, that you are so passionate about, that you want to learn more about, that you can't get enough of, that you want to talk about. And really write that list down and see if there's a thread that runs through that list. Is it a thread of service? Is it a thread of building, right? Are you a builder, a creator? Is it a creativity thread? What's the thread that runs through those things, and how can you have more of that in your life? Because when we turn towards those things, the things that make us feel those ways, we have a greater sense of passion and purpose in our lives, which is really what we're all craving. And when we feel filled up, then we can be there for other people in a more profound way. So it's actually beneficial to everyone that you stand in your passion and in your purpose. So give that a shot. I'd love to hear what you come up with. If you have any aha moments, if you see a strong theme running through the things that you write down, or if you decide it that maybe this means you're going to start something new in your life. I just would love to hear what everybody has to say when they do this exercise. So give it a shot. Let me know. And I will be sending my newsletter out as always in a few days. And I'll give you a few other exercises related to some of the things that we talked about on this show. So be on the lookout for that. And if you're not signed up for that, you can find the link to signing up in my Instagram, in my Facebook under the bios, or at the link tree at the bottom of the show notes. Okay, I will talk to you next week. Have a wonderful week, and I love you as always. Bye. Hi, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, I ask that you please like the show, follow, subscribe, or share. The way that podcasts work is the more people that do one of those things, the more likely it is that when someone's looking for a podcast to listen to, our show will pop up for them. I started this podcast because I really see there's a great need in our world for people to feel more peace, joy, love, and acceptance in their lives. And I think we can do that when we have a greater sense of self-awareness. We can become conscious creators of our own lives. And I'm seeking to do that for as many people as possible. So if you could help me by liking, sharing, or subscribing to the show, I'd really appreciate it. And hopefully someone hears a conversation that changes their life. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Much love.